As we continue, John Mallett joins us right now. He is from Main Street Mortgage. He and our colleague Lamont Germany will be hosting a show called Homeownership in the Neighborhood. Did you know that there are scores, actually millions of African Americans who have the wish to own homes, but don't know that they qualify? And John and Lamont will help ease those fears and help them transition from renting into buying. John, thanks for taking the time to join us today. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right, you're teaming up with our colleague and the signature voice of HSRN Lamont Germany to
Right.
begin a new podcast here at HSRN. And with your company, Mainstream Mortgage, you've been transitioning folks from renting to buying.
Yes.
How does your new podcast endeavor help to facilitate that?
Well, it's really an education process. That's a great question. It's about educating. There are 3 million African-American households in the United States, 3 million that can buy but don't know it. Most of them don't know it. And the reason they don't know it is because of the environment that they grew up in, for many of them. And so there's a phenomenal opportunity for them to be able to buy. There was a study done a little while back by Fannie Mae that showed that 45% of the people surveyed thought that you had to have 20% down for a down payment on a home, when the reality is you only need 3%. And the number of people, the most respondents who responded to 20% were people of color. And so we looked into that. My team and I, we do a lot of work, a lot of research, and we looked into that very deeply. And we found that individuals or children that come from homes that are rented have 15% less likelihood to buy than those who come from homes that are owned by their parents. And we looked at that even further. We said, well, why would that happen? What would be the reason for that? And it turns out, it's very interesting, is that those children who grew up in rental homes, basically comments come from their parents like, well, you don't want to put a hole in the wall because we got to get our money back when we move and we want to get our deposit. Well, when a parent says that to a child, it's basically saying, hey, we're going to have to move at some point. Or when the toilet's broken and the father says, hey, our toilet's broken, we're going to have to get the landlord to pay it. And then they might say something like, well, the landlord doesn't want to pay it, so we have to fix it. And then another time comes along when they said the landlord has to move, they want to sell the property, and so we have to move out. It's a much different conversation from a home environment for individuals that grow up in a home that's owned. In those homes, they say, hey, let's paint your room, let's fix up the yard, let's do all of these things. And so the conversation is totally different. When I was growing up in the projects, and this is why I'm so passionate about this, is that when I was about 8 years old, my parents split. My dad basically walked out, and my mother moved to San Luis Obispo in California so she could finish her college education. And in doing that, in the 6-year period from age 8 to 14, we moved 4 times, and it was a result of always being evicted or not being able to make our payments. And then we ended up in the projects where I grew up the rest of my teenage years. And so it became really home to me about how important stability is and how important home ownership is.
To that end, do you find yourself having to ease people's fears about home ownership in order to get them to take the step? Or what are the greatest, apprehensions that many have about making the commitment to long-term ownership?
Okay, that's a great question. And really where that comes from, when we talk to our clients, it's really an education process. When we go through the process and we talk about how that the median net worth, Mark, of a renter in the United States is $5,000. The median net worth of a homeowner in the United States is $230,000. It's a 46 times difference. And so we really focus on the idea that what homeownership can produce, what the result of that can be. And a lot of and we talk about the underbelly of homeownership, the soft side that most people don't talk about. And you know, a lot of people say, well, we don't want to throw a rent away anymore, which is true. That's very good, because whether you're renting or you're buying real estate. It's just that when you're renting, you're buying it for somebody else. And so the whole idea is this underbelly, you know, people who own homes, they have 50% less chance of divorce, if you can believe that. The children do better in school. In fact, one study was done by Habitat for Humanity that showed that children who grow up in homes that are rented have a higher propensity to have asthma and breathing problems. And so there's a whole host of things that go along with home ownership. And I'll give you an example. I have a couple all the time, happens all the time, either individuals or couples who come to me, they look at a home, they see it over the weekend and they go, hey, we just came upon this property. And they always say, it always starts with a quote, we know we can't qualify, but we wanted to find out what it would take to be able to qualify to buy this home. And so sure enough, they sit down with me and probably half the time they qualify. I had a client recently, a young couple come to me the other day that actually I started with a year ago. His credit score was 590 and you know, the income wasn't there. And in 1 year, the score went from 590 to 790. And the income went from maybe 45,000 to 75,000, which was enough to qualify for he and his wife. And they bought. It happens all the time. Anytime people come to me and say, I probably can't qualify, chances are 9 times out of 10, they can qualify.
Talk for a second, if you could, about the race issue and property ownership in the United States at this time. What kind of challenges are minorities facing, or is there a level playing field? Because at the end of the day, it's not about black or white, it's about the green.
That's right. It's exactly right. And that's what we're educating for, because the facts is that they can buy. But I mean, right now, 25% of those who rent in the Black community can buy, but don't know it. It's amazing to me.
Is there a systematic thing that's going on to keep people from truly understanding that?
Yeah, I think it is. And a lot of people will say, well, it's income. And I go, well, income is definitely a factor. Income is less for minority. There's no argument about that. But yet, why is it, if that's the case, then why is it that the home ownership rate is the same or a little bit higher for high school white school dropouts than it is for African Americans that have graduated from college? Their income is higher than white high school dropouts. I can prove that to you. Or it's going to be about the same, but yet their home ownership rate is higher. I believe it stems from a couple of things. Number one, they grew up in rentals. When I was growing up in the projects, I never thought that home ownership would be possible. Not a chance in the world. In fact, I did a workshop at an inner city high school in Los Angeles with high school seniors, and I taught them how to buy a home. And it never occurred to them that they could actually buy a home if they put themselves on the right trajectory to be able to do that. Never even entered their minds. And I think that the idea is that there is been so much, you know, I mean, right now there's a 25 to 30 point difference between minority homeowners, especially African-American and white, 25 to 30 points. I mean, it's amazing. And that's way, way too low. And that's the same as it was in 1968 when Civil Rights Act was passed. And I really think it has a lot to do with education. In 1968, it was before the Civil Rights Act was passed, it was legal to do redlining. It was legal to exclude Blacks from certain communities. It's not that way anymore. And there has to be a education and awareness process to be able to make that work. And that's what we're doing with HSRN. And, you know, we could talk about the political aspects, we could do all of that. But in my opinion, the key to this whole thing is for the community of color to really get educated and have a desire, because once they're on fire, and that's why I talk about igniting a home buying revolution among the African American community. Once that ignites and people get the idea that they can actually buy, then all things happen. That's where the drive to buy comes in. All of a sudden they get gifts from parents. All of a sudden they go to their boss and say, hey, I need a raise. I'm worth it. They go to school more. They graduate from high school. They get a degree. They change jobs. I have seen them move mountains. Several clients that I had, in fact, I had one client who came to me and they said, we want to buy a home. And there was no possible way, not enough income, job wasn't right, nothing was right about them. And so they pulled a trailer onto their backyard of the parents' home. They lived in the trailer. In 1 year, they came back to me and said, okay, can we buy now? And sure enough, in 60 days, they were in a house. So the drive to buy is amazing what it will do.
So I'll end it on this equation. Literacy plus confidence equals home ownership.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what
100%.
we're moving towards?
Yeah, that's what we're
In
moving
terms
toward.
of home ownership in the neighborhood, the new podcast that you and Lamont Germany will be hosting here on HSRN.
That's right.
So that's the big picture now. So in 20 years from now, we're looking at having more diversity on the streets of America if this thing works out the way that you're hoping.
You bet. That's what we want.
Well, you know, in some context, there are those that will argue that if you believe like this, you're doing the work of the Lord. I mean, I can remember 25, 30 years ago in high school, the thought of, you know, financial independence through home ownership being taught to kids at the high school level is beyond the realm of comprehension. What was the genesis for you?
Oh, it's the way that I grew up. I mean, you know, having grown up in that kind of an environment, my mother died when I was 18. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when I was 12. And just growing up in that environment, what I wanted stability. And home ownership provides a degree of stability that you can't get by renting. And the passion is there and people can do it. They really can.
And is it age, or is this something that you need to get on when you're younger, or is it something that, you know, gray beards, you know, there are a lot of people that have epiphanies late in life. Where do you fall on that side of the street?
Oh man, I fall whenever you can responsibly buy the home. When you can responsibly buy a home, because a lot of times the people in the African American communities, and it's really sad to say, is the rent that they're paying right now is the same as they would be paying on buying a home. And you know, they can do it. It's just a matter of saying, is it possible, and how do I go about making that happen?
John Millett joins us right now. He is president of Main Street Mortgage. Don't forget to join us here at HSRN, the network for home ownership in the neighborhood, the new podcast, which will be debuting. When are you guys going to kick off this program?
Well, that's a great question. We got the first podcast coming out. The test is being done. We're developing it right now, and we estimate that we'll have it done in the next 30 days.
Okay, great. So we look forward to hearing you right here on the voice of the community, HSRN. John Mallett, how can people reach out and talk to you even before the podcast starts?
Just you can get me on my phone number, which is 818-874-9900. You can go to John W. Millett, that's MALLETT.com, johnwmillett.com. You can upload the first chapter of my book free of charge. It's a book called Buy Your First Home Today. And anything I can do to help you get into the swing of having the confidence that you can buy, that's what I'm here for.
John Millett, don't forget to join him. He is from Main Street Mortgage. He and Lamont Germany will be launching home ownership in the neighborhood in the not too distant future, right here on the place that puts the U in HBCU. It's HSRN. John, look forward to talking to you again sometime, some friend. Thank you so much for your time. And more importantly, thank you for investing at least in literacy, home ownership for so many people who I'm not quite sure have ever had that on their grid.
Right. Thank you so much, Mark. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you for letting me come on today.
Stay with us. We got more of what you came here for. It's the Sports Group 2.0 on something other than your radio. It's HSRN, the network, where we put the U in HBCU because Black Talk matters over here. Thank you, John.
You got it.